Hi, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Parky. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in clinical psychology at Stanford's Sleep Health and Insomnia program, and today I'll be talking about some evidence-based ways that we can use to feel a little bit more energized in the morning. So I first really want to highlight that the transition between sleep and wake and sleep is not as clear-cut as what people might think. There are various levels of consciousness at both waking and sleeping that happens during this process, and as a result, it's not like a light switch where we feel suddenly awake or suddenly asleep, but really I think this transition is more like a dimmer, where we slowly transition into sleep and then we slowly transition into wake in the morning. And the reason why I think this is important to talk about is because sometimes people wake up with the expectation that they should feel immediately fully rested and alert, and otherwise it means that they didn't have a very good night's rest. But in reality, there are a number of factors that contribute to this initial, what we call sleep inertia, this transitional period where we start to feel a little bit groggy in the beginning before we finally transition to a fully alert state. And this phenomenon of sleep inertia happens to basically everybody. And this has been proven in in-lab studies where people do some cognitive testing after waking up, and we see sort of an initial decline in performance until they slowly start to wake up and their performance improves. And also even outside of the lab, people are more likely to end up in car accidents or be much slower to respond to different situations because of this initial sleep inertia. And sleep inertia can actually be a little bit of a vague term because there's a lot of factors that contribute to malaise in the morning. For example, not getting enough sleep, waking up at a deeper stage of sleep, or if you just happen to be a bit of a night owl where you're more active at night but less active in the morning. All of these things can contribute to greater sleep inertia, and for some people, sleep inertia can last even up to an hour, if not more. But fortunately, there are some ways that we can engage in, strategies that we can use to improve and reduce how long we are in this transitional phase. So the first thing that you can do is simply get enough sleep. So the American Academy of Sleep Medicine recommends somewhere between 7 to 9 hours worth of sleep, and this is going to be individual to you. Some people are going to need a little bit more, some people are going to need a little bit less, and this is going to be, again, unique to yourself. And the question then becomes, how do I know if I've gotten enough sleep? And the way I think about it, and I don't want to be perfectionistic here because I don't want you to have an excessive focus and tendency to fixate on a perfect number for sleep, but if you generally feel okay in the morning, you don't feel like you need an additional sleep, and you feel generally rested throughout the day, with some watering holes, like for example after lunch, people usually feel a little bit sleepy during that post-lunch dip, as well as in the evening when they're getting ready for bed, they're going to be sleepy then. If for the most part you feel like you've got enough energy throughout your day, you probably have enough sleep. So after getting enough sleep duration, the next thing is to make sure you're generally having a fairly regular bed and wake time, because we really want to set our circadian rhythm, our internal clock that tells us when we should be sleepy and more awake and all these other things. But if we have a very set circadian rhythm by getting sort of regular exposure to light in the morning and waking up at the same time in the morning, then our body will start to know, oh, this is my time to wake up, this is my time to send some more energy and some more waking signals, and then that set circadian clock will work for you to be able to make sure that you're feeling more and more awake at the same time in the morning. So to recap, first of all, we want to get enough sleep, so sleep duration. We also want general regularity in our sleep-wake schedules, going to bed and waking up around the same time, and getting some sunlight in the morning to really set our circadian clock, because sunlight is the strongest timekeeper. And number 3, we also want to make sure we're getting a good timing of sleep. So as we've talked a little bit about before, there is generally a different chronotype for each person. Each person has their own circadian preference in terms of whether they're a bit more of a early bird or night owl or somewhere in between, and you'll probably have a sense of where you lie when I ask you the question. If you could choose whenever you went to bed and when you would wake up that would make you feel the best, what is your feeling best rhythm? And you might then have a sense of whether you're a little bit more of an early bird or night owl or somewhere in between. And for some people this might be tricky because society requires us sometimes to wake up at 9 to 5, but if you're a night owl, that's going to be really hard because you're going to have to move your schedule a little bit earlier, even if that's not your body's preference. But in those cases, it's still okay. We can still support the sleep inertia. We can still improve your sleep. It's just going to be a little bit more uncomfortable than if you got to perfectly choose your time schedule. So sleep scientists at UC Berkeley actually conducted a study to see if they could reduce sleep inertia using a specific protocol, and they were really successful with that in that they reduced sleep inertia on average by 25 to 30 minutes. So the specific protocol that they used was labeled Rise Up, which stood for resist snoozing, increase activity, shower or wash your face, exposure to sunlight, upbeat music, or phone a friend. So one thing that I definitely encourage you to do is to try your best to avoid snoozing, because although snoozing can feel really good in the moment, it can actually prolong our sleep inertia in the long term. And one strategy I often find really helpful with patients is to ask them to put their alarm a little bit further away across the room, so that when it rings, they kind of have to get up and walk all the way over there. And by the time that they do that to close the alarm, they're kind of already moving, so it makes it much easier to build more momentum from there rather than snoozing the alarm because it's right next to you. So the next thing that you can do is really just increase your activity a little bit more in the morning. So this doesn't mean you have to go for a jog or a marathon or crush a chest day at the gym. Really all it means is that you're kind of a little bit more active in your day-to-day. Maybe you're moving around a little bit more as you're making coffee, or you're kind of going out into the patio and getting a little sunlight, just a little bit more activity than you would normally do. And with all of these rise up strategies, I think of them almost like a choose your own adventure. So there's no right or wrong way to implement them. You can pick the ones that feel right for you. So if you like to shower in the morning, that's awesome. If you prefer to splash your face with some cold water or drink a nice tall cup of water, if you want to listen to some music and listen to You're the Best or, I'm Just a Kid by Simple Plan, or play with your dog, anything that gets you kind of going will be super helpful for reducing the overall sleep inertia. So pick the ones that feel right for your life. And very briefly, I do want to talk about the role of naps on sleep inertia. So the research seems to suggest that longer naps seems to impact an increased amount of sleep inertia that we experience, which makes theoretical sense because we might be at a deeper stage of sleep if we are sleeping for a much longer time, we're napping for a longer time. So one thing that can be helpful is to simply shorten our naps. So maybe making them maybe 20 to 30 minutes instead of an hour or 2 hours, which might be helpful to reduce overall sleep inertia while still feeling kind of rested from your nap. Anyway, that's all for this video. I hope some of these strategies were helpful for you to learn more about sleep inertia and feel a little bit more energized in the morning. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.